what we have found in our experience work is what matters most is what you and your team find to be most effective for you. So we are going to surface some of your experiences right up front. And let me tell you, let me just show you kind of what our plan is today. So here's our plan. And as you will see, it is a 13-step plan. So this particular workshop is an adventure, it is an experiment, and it is a little bit of a whirlwind. So I invite you to hold on, play along, and capture some of what you're seeing and what you think about what you're seeing as we go, because we'll take the last 15 minutes of our 90 minutes to go, okay, what happened there? How do we make sense of that? And then come together with our reflections on the whole thing. So welcome those of you who just joined us. We are going to start by using our cameras to figure out what our own experiences of camera use are. So if you don't have your camera on and you can turn it on, we would love to see your faces, because here's what we're going to do. I know we have folks from all over the world. So using your frame, so go ahead and take, if you've got your camera on, take your hands and sort of draw the outside of the box just to show that you kind of know what your space looks like. Yeah, fabulous. Good. Oh, hi, Danielle, love to see you. All right, wonderful. Hi, Leslie. Fabulous. Well done. So now in this space, you've got a top, you've got a bottom. What time of the day is it for you where you're at? If the bottom is first thing in the morning and the top is like, I am about ready for bed, where are you in your day? So I'm really pretty darn early. Oh, look, got some good, but Marta's in Spain?
In Germany.
Germany, yeah, so it's getting late over there. Julie's in London, it's getting late over there. Awesome. So we all have different chronotypes. Given the time of day it is for you, where is your energy? If your energy is low or high, how are you feeling? I'm super excited to be back here with you. Yeah. All right, we got some folks who need some energizers. Great. So let's do a little bit of tuning into each other's energy. Those of you on camera, I want you to find one other person on camera. And I want you to just move a little bit. Okay, just a little bit of movement. And I want you to find one other person on camera, look at them and sync up with them. Any person doesn't matter, but as you're moving, see if you can you can sync up with them. Okay.
No one's going to sync up with me.
Excellent. So as you notice, when you watch somebody and they're watching somebody else and they shift and then you have to shift and it keeps moving a little bit until at some point we're all just kind of doing this. And if we had candles, wouldn't that be fun? But we don't. So that's a fun way to kind of just see what's going on in our presence. So we've looked at our energy. We've kind of paid attention to each other's energy. Let's talk about other ways that we can use cameras and when we find them to be useful. So so I'm just kind of curious, in terms of your teams, what has your use of cameras been? And we're going to do this a little bit differently. So I'm going to ask everybody to hide themselves with their camera. You can put your finger on it or use a cover or whatever. And when I ask a question, if it applies to you, go ahead and turn it back on. So how many of you regularly used cameras before the pandemic? Okay, go ahead and cover up again. How many of you are comfortable facilitating meetings online? Some amount of overlap there, right? Camera use and facilitators, facilitators tend to show up a little strongly there. All right, next one. How many of you prefer to facilitate online rather than in the room? All right, not as much. Okay, Fascinating. So go ahead and everybody show yourselves again if you're willing. Next set of questions, again, about your preferences around camera use. And for this one, I want you to give me a thumbs up if you completely, totally, always agree with the statement. A thumbs down if you're like, never, no way. And a flat hands for, yeah, that doesn't apply to me. Okay, so let's do a quick practice. Can you hear my voice? Thumbs up. Great, cool. Are you a peanut butter sandwich? No. You are. Kavita's a peanut butter sandwich. All right, fabulous. We learn something new every time. I have a sideways for maybe. Okay, so and for this one, should you wear shoes? You know, sometimes. Right. This is how we'll do sometimes. Not applicable. You don't have no feet. Okay. And then should you feed biscuits to your dinosaur? I don't have a dinosaur. This is not applicable to me. Some of you have chickens. That's right. Little dinosaurs. They're creepy. All right. So using those hand signals, yes, no, sometimes, maybe. Do you prefer to have your camera on when you're attending an online workshop? Okay. No, yeses and no's. Great. Awesome. Do you prefer to have your camera on when you are attending a webinar? All right. All right. Cool. How about when you're facilitating? For those of you who facilitate. Right on. What about when you're trying to learn something challenging? Okay. Okay. What about when you're supporting another facilitator as a tech host? And if anybody who does that, yeah. And there's probably a fair number of not applicables. Okay. How about when you are meeting with a prospective client or somebody you're interviewing or something like that? Right on, make a good impression, right? Meetings with your team. Okay. And meetings with your relatives. I love looking up my grandpa's nose, right? Not so much. Okay, fabulous. So final question and final use of this particular medium. We're going to do fist to 5. So a fist to 5 is on a scale of 0, I hate this idea, to 5, jazz hands, I love it, and a 3 is, I could go either way. In your opinion, and based on your experience, how important is it for people to have their cameras on during meetings? 3, 2, 1, show me your fist to 5. All right, look at that. That is not consensus. Well done. That is, of course, the entire point of the event. So we're going to get to know each other a little bit and play a little bit with these ideas. And because we're playing with the camera, one of the features we're going to use a little bit later on is the Zoom filter. So we're going to send you off to play in groups. Right, Julie? I did it backwards, I think, but this is going to be perfect. To explore who's here, meet each other, and play with those filters. So here are the instructions. I'm going to post them into chat. You're going to have 4 minutes to answer what brings you to the session, what kind of camera are you using, and which of the Zoom filters make you the most happy. And let me share my screen to show you how to turn on the Zoom filter if that's a feature you have access to. So it looks like, not that one. It looks like this. So way down here next to your camera, there's a little arrow. And from there, you can choose Zoom filters. And part of the reason we're sending you into smaller groups is that you have time to play with this in a group where, you know, you've got friends to help you out. And if you can't find it, that's okay. You can have a nice conversation anyway. All right. So 4 minutes, go say hi, go play with some filters, and we will see you back here in a minute.
I've always wanted to grow, a handlebar mustache, but I'm not really
Welcome
capable
back.
of it. So.
Oh, I love these. These are so fun. So it looks like we found some that were good times.
John the Pirate.
Hey, Tom, are those 3D glasses working?
Excellent.
Everything is live in Technicolor. All of you are like popping through the screen now. It's very advanced technology.
Awesome.
Well, and so we play with the filters, because they're a hoot. And when do you get a chance to do that? Sometimes in a professional setting. But also because we're going to use the filters now to start to try and combat one of the things that research shows helps, that contributes to emotional exhaustion and Zoom fatigue. So while we are all looking at one another like this, it's fun, it's vibrant, it's energetic, and it's a little overwhelming sometimes. There's a lot of information coming at us. We're having to look at and appreciate everybody in the camera all the time, which is not really a natural way to talk to other people, right? If you're in a space, you look away, you can get up, you can do other things. So we're going to take the noise down a notch. And in the filter, there was a specific filter I want you to try. I'm going to share my screen and show you what it is. And it will look like, I'm going to take my beard off, even though I love it. I'm going to sew no more beard for me. We're going to take some of those things off. And I'm going to turn myself to monochrome. I'm going to invite you to do the same. And I'm going to share my screen and show you exactly what that filter looks like. This is totally an experiment. We shall see what that feels like. Okay, so this is, go ahead and find this and pick one of these first couple of monochrome filters. And we'll just see what that feels like with the visual noise taken down. There we go. There we go. Next up, I'm going to have you do another filter, another change to your video settings. I want you to hide self-view. So one of the things that can be quite anxiety provoking is we are concerned about how we personally look, right? So to do that, you're going to hover over your own face, and there are 3 dots in the top right corner. I want you to click that menu, and one of the options is to hide self-view. Okay, so go ahead and try that and see what that does for the visual weight, for the amount of noise in our space. And then the final reset rule of the moment is a new rule. I want you to focus on other people here, not your camera. So when we are presenting, when we are facilitating, when we are giving instructions and trying to show up at our best high profile self, we look directly in the camera to emulate eye contact. But then we're not able to necessarily listen or focus on the other people as well. So for the next part of our work together, I want you to forget that the camera's there and just look at your other black and white friends. All right, so that's this reset. And let's just, pay attention with this one to how that feels. And I know some people can't use the filters, so they, no judgment, that is what it is. Okay, look at that. Isn't that different? So quick question in the chat. I would love to know, what are you noticing right now?
Looks like
yes, Betty was going around in circles.
I couldn't find my black and white settings. Can you show?
Do you have access to the filters
No.
on the? You might not. Some corporations block it. So yeah.
Okay.
All right. So so we've played with using our camera in a couple of different ways. Now we're going to take some time based on your experience that you shared earlier when we were using our hands in the space and the experience you've just had to go ahead and synthesize our advice based on our experience. right? You've all had plenty of time with some video meetings. So again, this is going to be another small group activity, but it is a working activity. So we're going to send you into small groups to discuss with your group, when do you recommend people turn their cameras on? And when do you think it's okay to turn the cameras off? I want you to think about situations when the camera use impacts the overall meeting quality, right? So we talked about interviews, we talked about working with clients. How do you use the camera to make sure you get the meeting results you need? And situations where the camera use impacts personal feelings of comfort, ability to learn, ability to focus, different goals. And we're going to use GroupMap to do that. So if you haven't already, go ahead and click the link that is in there, and I will show you what the GroupMap looks like. And we're going to take 8 minutes to just work in small groups and surface some of these recommendations. So GroupMap is an online collaborative tool where everybody can type. So when do you recommend cameras be on for everyone? When do you recommend cameras be off for everyone? When is it okay, or when is it best for your camera to be off? And when should individuals make sure that their camera is on? All right. Questions about what is about to happen here? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you say my camera, do you mean us as facilitator, or do you mean just us when we're in any role?
I mean, you personally, and I would go ahead and add different notes for the different roles that you
Got
might
it.
take,
Okay.
because we all have an opportunity to, fill those.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, Julie, are we all good? All right. I'm going to work in small groups. You're welcome to just type or talk. Go for it. Okay, everybody, welcome back. So quick round of feedback. What came up for you that you thought was particularly interesting in that conversation? Anybody have something come up that they would like to share?
I think we all were on the same page. We all have the same experiences and same views going forward, how it should look like.
Well, that makes that easy, huh? Array alignment. Anybody else notice anything?
Well, someone talked in our group about someone who exclude the people who didn't want to be fully in and participate and turn their cameras on until they wanted. So, and they were having good results in that case. So I found that interesting.
I know that is interesting. I know that's certainly the case for me. I find it harder to notice people who aren't on camera. And harder to call them into the conversation. And it's, it's a failing, but it's also true. Speaking of which, we are going to reset our cameras once again. So we are now on step 5 of 13, I think. And in this case, we are going to turn our cameras off, except for our panelists. So go ahead and turn your camera off. And then Joe and Betty and I are going to come in full color. And then go ahead and hide this. So this is another little tip. So all of these people, we're going to basically do we're going to play a game. We're going to play a meeting science Jeopardy game. And then we're going to also do some looking at the expert advice, because you said as you had your conversation that you were all in alignment about when you should and when you shouldn't. But what we have found actually is that in the meeting research, they are not in alignment. In fact, there are some research papers that have come to polar opposite conclusions. So before we look at the research itself, I think it's useful to have a grounding in the terminology. So we're going to play this game first. And the thing I would ask for are 3 volunteers to come play our game. So if you are willing to play the game, and the game is Meeting Science Vocabulary Jeopardy, where you're going to have an opportunity to pick a topic and then just give us a definition, and our experts will say, yeah, that's good enough, and then you'll get the points or not. So can I have 3 people who are willing to play Meeting Science Jeopardy today? If you are willing to play, go ahead and turn your camera on or raise your virtual hand.
Oh, I just turned on my camera.
Yay! I need 2 more people ready to play. Yay, Iris! And 1 more. Marta's in. Sweet.
Marta.
All right. Oh, okay. So Nan, your question is, how do you hide non-video participants? Nan, go ahead and find a non-video, somebody who's not on video, like Tom, for example. And in the top right corner, those same 3 dots, go ahead and click that, and you will find hide non-video participants. And all the people who are not on video cease to be part of your view. Okay. Welcome to Meeting Science Vocabulary Jeopardy. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to start with whoever's name is alphabetically first. I believe that's Iris, right? Alphabetical is not my strong suit. So Iris, please pick. You have basically words that are worth 100 points, 200 points, or 400 points. Where would you like to begin?
200 points.
200 points. We'll take a 200-point word. So the term is asynchronous communication. Can you help us understand what asynchronous communication is?
That I can. That is communication not at the same moment. So one person sends something. Email is asynchronous communication.
Fabulous. Judges.
Yeah.
Do you think give that? Yeah. All right. Heads.
Yep.
That's a winner. So we're going to head and move that one. Oh shoot. I think it was that one here. Great. All right. Kavita, what would you like to pick? 100, 200, or 400?
400.
Okay.
Risk taker.
Kavita, can you tell us what inclusion is?
Oh, when you include those participants into their decision making.
Judges?
Not quite.
You use the word in the definition. What would you say the word include means? That's what I was looking for. Sorry.
And I don't think it also always means inclusion, decision making.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
because when we do census during our meeting, so we want everybody to participate, some way of engagement. So we want them to be included in some kind of conversation. That's what I understand inclusion means.
That's closer to inclusion than your first definition. The idea
Okay.
of making sure everyone has an opportunity to participate if they want to.
Mhm.
the conclusion is the welcome contribution of voices. That's what inclusion is, the welcome contribution of disparate voices.
Perfect,
Sweet.
thank you.
So that I think we're gonna give that a close enough. You're up, Marta. 100, 200, or 400?
I'll take it 200.
Excellent. Oh,
We have the
aha,
same one.
that's
I know
probably
that.
the one that I should have given. Let's try this one. Bias.
Oh, that's all conditions that you bring with into the subject. Everything you knew already about the subject, that it's going to color how you are going to judge the subject.
All right, nicely done. Bias moves its way over here. I think that might be asynchronous communication. We're going to put it over here. All right, we're back to Kavita. Oh no, Iris, sorry. Iris, what have you got? 100, 200, 400?
200.
Let's see if this is actually a different one. Conversational interface.
That's a tough one. I would say face-to-face conversations. Maybe through some media source.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's not. Does that Kavita or Marta, would you like to take conversational interface for 200?
I would say that's if you talk to a device, that's a conversational interface, what you're using in the device. Like speaking to the device.
So for you, conversational interface is the device. It's an application that allows conversation.
Well, it's the way an interface. It's the place in which you communicate to something, and conversation. I don't get that word, but it's like you have a talk to it.
So it's a place.
It's a way of communicating with devices, and it's a way of talking to devices, and the devices is hearing you and understanding and talking to you back.
So it's you and a device in a conversation.
Yeah.
Not another person.
I would say a device, but maybe it's another person. It's a bit of a guess from me. So
Judges?
It doesn't quite get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Kavita, do you want to take a quick stab at this, or will you let this one go?
I was thinking like how we use Zoom interface or WebEx interface, or will that be an interface or a platform? That's what we are going to use.
It's a platform that enables the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's much closer.
Yeah, that's pretty close. So that's the thing about it, that there's so many different ways in which we can have conversation. And so I think of conversational interface as the myriad of ways in which conversation can occur. And that could be an electronic platform such as one we're using right now, or it could be the air that's around us as we speak to someone across a room.
Okay.
Or the chat or anything. So
Yep.
Kavita, you're going to lead us off. Next word.
Okay. I will take 400.
Okay,
Wow.
let's go for it. Media richness theory.
Oh, so I think it means which has all the features inbuilt into the media what you are using. Like how we are seeing like every day, Zoom is getting updated to more technology features and then creating more richness, how we can see each other, how we can communicate, how we can use breakout session, how we can use like filters you showed us, and you can hide those participants, and like multiple features keep adding into the technology. So it's kind of getting more richer and richer. That's what I understand.
So you're close. I don't think it has to be the technology. Media richness theory is really, if it's okay if I jump in here, Elise?
Yes, please. Mhm.
It's really about the features, as you said, of the communication environment, right? How many features are there? So if you think about audio, is you only have the sound coming from the device or from the speaker or whatnot. Whereas with this, you can see my hands. I talk with my hands. You can see my face. The more rich the medium, the more modes of communication, the more things that can reach the receiver on the other end of the message you're sending. So and the theory would suggest that more is usually, not always, but usually better.
Which is why we did the black and white experiment that took down our media richness a little bit. So media richness theory is richness of information to convey, but also richness of information to deal with. All right, Marta and Iris, we're going to give you a chance to catch up with Kavita, who's taken a lead. Marta, what would you like?
Well, I'll take a 400 one. So
Okay, a 400, and this will be our last round, and then we're going to move on. But multimodal communication.
well, it's when you can use lots of ways to communicate.
Judges?
That's pretty close. I mean, Betty, what do you think?
A thumbs up. I mean, there's always more that you can say, right? But I think fundamentally you're there on the right track.
Yeah.
All
So it's
right. Iris.
multimodal is just like what we're doing right now. We have the video and we have the audio and we have the sound coming from our mouths and that's the thing. So when you have single modal communication, it means you only have one of those. You don't have nonverbal or something, right?
Well, and there was a greater modality added with Elise's design of the brainstorm, right? So you had this that was another mode of communicating in the small groups where you're collaborating and idea sharing through a board, through a whiteboard. So yeah.
Okay, Iris, bring us home.
Okay, 400.
All right, let's see which of the 400s we've got. Here, this is a great one. Cognitive load.
I think it means the capacity of your brain to take in information.
Not quite. You're on the right track.
Yeah, you're on the right track, but not quite there.
Did I do another guess? Because I was thinking about overload. That's why I came to cognitive load. Maybe the weight of information for your brain. How much
That's
it
closer.
costs.
That's
Basically.
closer.
Yeah, that's closer because what you said first was what your capacity is, and that capacity is whatever it is. Cognitive load is how much is that thing that you're being asked to do, whether it be communicating in a video conferencing session or whatever, that how much is that taxing your capacity? That's your
Correct.
cognitive load.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right, so we have some more terms here, but in the interest of time and the interest of celebratory awesomeness, we are going to stop there on the game part and congratulate our amazing participants for being bold enough to play Meeting Science Jeopardy with us. So virtual claps and snaps for everybody who is clapping in the background in the chat. Send them your love, please. We've got some of the other terms that were here include engagement, turn taking, so non-verbal communication. I'm hoping those are all 100 levels, so we're not going to stop and talk about those. Conversational interface, just the mechanism by which the conversation happens. Key one when we talk about camera use is emotional fatigue and decision fatigue. So we've talked about that cognitive load. When it becomes so high, you're tired, you're worn out, right? And then surface acting. And this is the last one I would love my judges to speak to while I stop sharing my screen. Do you want to talk about surface acting?
Sure.
Briefly.
When I was doing my research last year, in the pandemic, about why video meetings are so completely exhausting, I thought a big reason would be surface acting. But other studies have showed this: showing up and wearing a mask, pretending to be happy when you're really not happy, pretending to be interested when you're really bored, pretending to be supportive when you're really like, oh my God, another organizational change. All of that mask wearing and pretending to be positive when you're not, is called emotional labor, and it is it's a form of burnout doing that, right? That emotional labor creates where I had to go lay down on my sofa after a day of Zoom meetings. So the surface acting it's pretending on the outside that's not the same as what's inside.
And to reduce your need to do any surface acting for the next couple of minutes, we're going to go deeper into what the experts have found in their research in webinar mode. So if you are not a presenter, go ahead and turn your cameras off. And for the rest of you, you should have the non-video participants hidden. And I'm going to share you very, very briefly several research findings. So again, I'm going to share my screen. And let's take a look at the advice from the experts. Whoa. All right, so a number of different studies we're going to look at here. We are going to talk about our guest experts' work. We're also going to talk about some work from Erica Dewan and HBR. So we're going to start with, we already did this, boom, 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 boom. Dr. Allen, do you want to tell a little bit about what you found?
Sure. So Suddenly Virtual is actually very much data driven in the sense that in October of 2019, for whatever reason, I decided to start studying virtual meetings. And this was before we all suddenly were virtual, right? And so I went to the 1,000 people and asked them what do they think about their virtual meetings. And then in May of 2020, after the pandemic has started and we were all dealing with some of the challenges or a lot of the challenges associated with that, I asked those same 1,000 people what they thought of their virtual communication now and all their meetings. And what we found is that video on really actually matters quite a bit. Even though we know there's been studies that have shown that that has these negative things, video on improves engagement. People are more likely to engage when their video camera is on. It also helps to avoid misunderstanding, especially with new people. Like if you're meeting someone for the first time, you don't necessarily know what they sound like or look like when they're being sarcastic. And so they may be saying something sarcastically, but you take it as serious, and so then you behave accordingly. And I've seen this happen many times in meeting observations that I have done, where the lack of that rich medium, which we talk about media richness, creates a challenge. And the data, what was interesting about the data is we found that face-to-face and virtual were pretty close to the same in terms of their outcomes. People were satisfied and they were generally effective. Teleconference was dramatically worse, like 30% worse than either of those options. And so I bring that up because we could have an audio only meeting easily in a Zoom platform, right? We just turn off all the cameras. But I promise you that meeting is much worse. And the reason it's worse is not necessarily because the cameras are off. It's because of what people are doing when the cameras go off. It's all the multitasking. Now I can do my email because nobody's paying attention to me, right? Or whatever you might be doing. And part of that is the problem of the meeting itself. If a meeting requires collaboration, people are going to want to turn their cameras on so that way people can have their messages received, right? If it doesn't require collaboration, if it requires the boss or whomever to just spew at you, then it encourages not turning the video camera on and multitasking and not really paying attention to whatever the message is that's being shared. So those are some of the quick findings from the data that was in Suddenly Virtual. And then there's a whole lot of recommendations for how to manage that and how to deal with that. Because I'll remind everyone what we knew before. We knew that before the pandemic, people didn't like meetings. The pandemic didn't make it better. It just made it worse. And so now we have this opportunity to really engage with the right practices to make them more effective. So that's a quick summary there.
Thank you. So strong recommendation here to have video on. Now, fascinating. There was a very widely shared study published in Harvard Business Review that claimed that having video on as a default was incorrect. And in fact, corporate teams should have their video off by default because it reduced that cognitive load, the emotional fatigue. So many of you, if you've worked with corporate teams or you're on a corporate team, you know they've gone completely, I'm trying to think of a word I'm supposed to be able to say while recording, over enthusiastically scheduling way too many meetings back to back. It's out of hand in terms of the amount of meetings they're running. And that having the camera on, they claimed was especially unfair to women and to people who were new to the team. I personally have all kinds of strong feelings about this particular study, but that was what they found. So that's an off by default recommendation from this group. One of our friends who is a researcher from UC Louvain did a study on what kinds of conversational interface matter or you should use for different types of conversations. And what he found was that it absolutely depended on the objective of the meeting. And this is why we did some of that work at the very beginning of our session, where we're talking about when you're talking with clients or your team or your family, right? So the intent of the meeting, the content of the meeting should determine whether you use video conferencing or whether something like an audio only mechanism, for example, in a webinar style discussion, is appropriate. So that was his findings. So we have our strong recommendation for videos on by default. We have a strong recommendation for videos off by default. And we have a strong recommendation of tailoring it to the specific topic of the meeting. And then our final expert is Dr. Johnson, do you want to tell us about your recommendation?
Yeah, sure. Where to start? When I think about meetings as a business person, right? And that's where I've spent most of my life, is in business. And for me, being in meetings has been about, let's get the work done. And the more efficiently we can do that, the fewer hours I'm going to have to work tonight. And at the same time, what I really want to do is enjoy being with the people I work with, because those relationships, I count on them. That's why people go the extra mile for me. If we have a strong relationship, that's actually what gives more meaning to my day than getting my tasks done. So when we think about whether to have cameras on or not, I think that's what it comes down to, is, are cameras going to help us accomplish the task of the meeting? Are they going to help us forge good relationships? Because the purpose of a meeting is really, it's not the meeting, right? The purpose of the meeting is to create a team effort. And what happens in that meeting informs what happens after, what happens in the meeting informs what happens after the meeting. And that stuff also informs what comes into the next time we're together. So I think that what I say to my clients is, if the meeting requires spaces to achieve the goal of the meeting, yeah, let's say, everybody please have your cameras on unless you have an extenuating circumstance, because we're here to get the work done. And at the same time, it is nice to see faces. If it's not essential to get our collective, our team task done in this meeting, then let's make it optional. Because for so many people, trying to keep track of what's in chat, what's in the poll, what's on the shared screen, here are my handouts, and I'm trying to put on an act to make you show I'm interested in what you have to say, all of that is just way too much. In fact, my research showed resoundingly, there are so many people who say, I cannot focus on the business when these cameras are on, because I feel like I have to keep looking at that green dot, just like I'm looking at you right now. I have to keep looking at that green dot to show my boss that I'm engaged. And meanwhile, I can't take notes, because if I look down, it looks like I'm not paying attention. And if I look over to chat, it still looks like I'm checked out or reading my email. And so I'm hyper conscious of how I'm showing up, which is different from surface acting. Like, surface acting is pretending something that you don't really feel. Impression management is what's happening in these video meetings, and it's very different from an in-person environment. Impression management is, I know what I'm all about. I'm really clear on my value, and I want to bring it. I want to bring it here. But in order to do that in this two-dimensional environment, I have to really pull up a lot of energy. Like, I have to modulate my voice. I have to sit, I'm sitting in a chair and I'm moving around, I'm trying to project that energy. As my research participants said, it takes a lot of energy to do this, even for those of us who are extroverts. So as a leader, the question is, how do you want people to be using their energy? Showing up and acting engaged when they really can't, many of them, do what needs to be done for the good of the business, or showing up and being able to be fully present, listening, remembering, thinking, synthesizing, and helping the group come to good decisions. Yeah, I'm pretty passionate about this.
It's awesome. So we have some pretty distinct recommendations. Now they're all actually saying a lot of similar things on a spectrum, and when you get into the details, it's nuanced. What they are all saying, absolutely 100% for sure, is run better meetings. Run better meetings. And then a lot of the issues about emotional fatigue and all of that get easier. So enough already with the terrible meetings. But there's another piece here that I would like to bring in from the practitioner side. And one of the reasons you'll see so many facilitators say cameras on all the time, and it is this. The quality of your attention often determines the quality of other people's thinking. So this is a quote from Nancy Klein. Our instructor, Judy Reese, uses this often. And this is something we're going to experiment with now. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to invite you in the chat. You've been in webinar mode for a minute. What are you noticing? Yeah. It takes a lot of pressure off, doesn't it? How many people are not paying attention anymore? That's the other.
Yeah, one thing I would say, at least to what you're saying, is that this goes right to what Betty was saying, and I'll add that what we conclude in Suddenly Virtual is that it really depends. If in a webinar, it's not necessary for everyone's camera to be on, right? Because you're not explicitly expecting collaboration from everybody at that, during that time. You're not making a decision. You don't need people's faces. But in other circumstances, you do. So I love how you concluded with run better meetings, because that usually means someone has to make a decision about, do I need collaboration and therefore cameras on, all, everyone engaged that way? Or is this more of an information sharing session? Is this a webinar, right? And in that case, you don't need the cameras on except for whoever's trying to communicate. And so it's really, I love that Betty has the "it depends," because that's such a common, we use that all the time in teaching our students about how to manage the various things they deal with in the workplace. So very cool.
Very cool. Well, and I love that all of you found that moment to listen and focus and connect with that. Now we're gonna practice. We're gonna run 2 experiments back to back next, which actually require us to play with our cameras again. So here we go. 8 of 13. Camera reset number 3. If you would be so kind as to rejoin us. Go ahead and turn your cameras back on. Go ahead and turn your filters off. We're going to be full color love for each other, and we're going to practice and experience what it's like to give and receive one another's attention in different camera modes. I know, Joe, you've got to go. So thank you so much for joining us.
Bye, all. Run better meetings.
Nice chatting with you.
All right. So this is what we're going to do. This is a very small group activity. We are going to do a couple of experiments by Kavita, where we look at the quality of our attention. Right? What circumstances help us feel heard, and what circumstances help us hear? And in the first one, you are going to break into dyads if we have, and we might end up with a group of, actually, Betty, you're our pitch hitter, depending on our numbers. So there's the goal to experience that. And here are the instructions. We're going to put you into groups of 2. We want you to say hello and decide who goes first. And then your topic is your experience with video conferencing meetings over the past 2 years and what you'd like to change. Or if that bores the snot out of you, go ahead and talk about a project you're excited about. So your choice on topic. And then when you are the speaker, we invite you to just share your ideas for 90 seconds. The person who is listening, I want you to just listen. You don't need to say anything. So there is no pressure here to reply or have a witty comeback or anything like that, but give them your full attention. Go ahead and, give them facial expressions, nod, smile, whatever it is that you think helps them know that you are hearing them. All right. And at 90 seconds, we'll send a note. It says 1.5 minutes. There's a little tiny dot there. So at 90 seconds, we'll send a note that it's time to switch, and then you'll switch partners, and then we'll come back and we'll reset again. Any questions about what's about to happen?
I hope I get to
go practice. Go practice. See what this is like. Okay. Welcome back. So I hope you hold on to that, because we're going to repeat it with a different set of settings. But before we do that, let's take a wiggle break. Oh my gosh, we've been at this for a while. So I invite you to stand up, stretch. You need a second to go get a glass of water. You can do that. My lower back gets kind of sore standing here the whole time. So, and then when you're done with your wiggle break, feel free to give me a thumbs up saying I'm good to go again. So.
Hey, Elise, I'm curious that you choose to stand while facilitating rather than sit. Would you speak to that?
I choose to stand most of the time, period. I find that when I sit too long, my hips freeze up and then I can't walk and I look, 40 years older than I am. So that it's mostly a personal health thing, but I also feel more grounded in the floor because my desk is really high and more able to express.
Thank you.
I would always stand if I was in a room. So I want that same energy. It's terrible though, because when I move around, my camera goes out of focus and I become Vaseline girl. And so it doesn't always serve me well. So let me fix that. All right. So as people are coming back, some of them are already in the next best possible setup. We're going to repeat the same exercise we just did with a new partner. And again, our intent is to figure out what this means for our ability to focus and our ability to feel heard. And this time we're going to do it with cameras off. So camera reset number 4, again, turn your camera off. And again, this is the same experiment. So the goal is to experience what it feels like to be heard and truly hear, and your topics are the same. So when you speak, either your experience with video conferencing or a project you're excited about, your choice. You'll have 90 seconds each. Speaker, please speak for the whole time. Start and stop as you want. Pause if you'd like. That is your time. You do with it what you want. If you don't have anything to say, well, that's okay too. Listener, I want you to not only have your camera off, but I want you to take a deep breath and I want you to close your eyes. I want you to really listen this time. I want you to listen for all of the nuances in their story. I want you to listen to see if you can understand who this person really, truly is. Speaker, go ahead and keep your eyes open so that you can see the note that it's 90 seconds and time to switch partners when it happens. I'm going to send you off into pairs, 3 minutes total, 90 seconds each. Enjoy this second conversation. All right, at this stage, I am super interested to learn, and this is our last thing we are doing today. This is the bluff, basically. What did you notice between those two different experiments? What came up for you? What did you notice?
I found more easier to talk if you have the cameras on and easier to listen if you have the cameras off.
Did anybody else feel similarly?
Yeah, I felt like
I think so.
I felt like we went faster in a way. Like we got into it quicker and stayed on time better. Hadn't thought about that, but
In which one?
in the second one with no video, it was easier just to jump right into we know what we need to do and talk and listen.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't negotiating maybe some of the emotional things, or maybe it's repetition. It's hard to say. Interesting. Fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know.
Leslie, what was your thought?
Well, it was interesting what Marta said. I do, having my eyes closed and just listening and knowing that I wasn't being seen did just let me kind of sink in a way that when I was aware that I was on camera, I didn't, even though I wasn't aware of being on camera.
Yeah, I was following on that one. I think something about having your eyes closed, because if I were just off camera, I might be tempted to glance around at the rest of my desktop. But off camera with my eyes closed, I was fully committed to the conversation, which that was an interesting extra layer of advice I thought was good. But I wouldn't have my eyes closed if I were on camera. So I think it's the combination to me that worked and made me more present in that conversation. The second one.
Now, as speakers, when you were speaking to nothing, how was that?
I found it difficult. It doesn't flow in a conversation. So you have to make everything up.
Yeah, a little bit as well. I think there's there's a little bit out there. There's no reactive feedback. Even if somebody's just listening, there's still a little bit of a head nodding, a little bit of, I heard. You don't know when you've been heard, so you keep going. a little bit without the video feedback.
I think
Abe?
for this exercise, it didn't, I didn't feel the lack of feedback, but if I were actually trying to explain something, I would want to hear some noises from the other person about whether they were following or not.
Iris, you said you're used to this. What is it? Tell us a little bit more about that.
I experiment a lot with walking meetings, so that's always camera off. And yeah, my project manager and I, we both experiment with it or practice it. So all our calls are audio only, and also in groups sometimes we try to some of us are on audio only, and we just walk and talk. Or actually, that's not true. When you're in a group call, we stop and we turn our videos on when we decide to say something. So that's different. Yeah.
Nice. So thank you for being willing to experiment with us and to play with these different ways of being in conversation with the video on and off, and not seeing people who are off and seeing people who are off, and all of these different things. As you saw from the recommendations, run better meetings, and it depends, I think, was the clear, strong message. And if the message is it depends, the question is then it depends on what, right? So it depends on what, and that comes down to the topic, as they found in the research, but also your experience. And we saw right up front that not everybody feels the same way about showing up on camera. Not everybody, I concentrate just fine on camera. It doesn't bother me because I'm a multitasker. I get bazillion distracted if I'm not doing at least 12 things. So please, dear God, flash some things in my face so I can pay attention to you. But that's unique for me, and not the same way for everybody. So as you go forward, one of the resources that Dr. Johnson and I worked on together, she put together a fabulous template for having this conversation with your teams and coming to some agreements of your own so that you can be explicit. Because as one of the reasons we ended with that experiment around what does it feel like to be heard or to speak into a void, is that while it may be better for some people to listen with the video off, that may be offensive or concerning to the person who's speaking to them. I don't know if you're paying attention to me. I don't know if you're really there. Are you multitasking? All of those kinds of assumptions that lead us to think ill of one another when we aren't understanding why somebody's making the choices they do can be cleared up if we just talk about it and set some agreements out explicitly. So that template is a guided way to go ahead and do that. But all of those things is one of the things that I would love for you to take from it, but I'm super curious what you're taking from it. So our time today is wrapping up. As in our last couple of minutes, bottom line up front, in one phrase or short sentence, how are you most likely to use what we've done here today? And if you'd like to speak, I would love that, or you're welcome to type it in the chat.
While we're waiting, Elise, I want to give a plug. Is that okay? While people are thinking and pulling their thoughts together, my latest research project is on dignity at work, and it relates to what happens in a meeting as well. And I need participants. It's a 20-minute anonymous survey about what happens. What does it look like when your dignity is affirmed or when your dignity is violated? And then what are the business results of that having happened? So I'm going to put a link in the chat because I really need research participants. And if you are willing to help me out, big gratitude.
And then I see some thank you. And you should post that in the mix so that some other folks can see it too, for sure. I see some great takeaways. Marta, you're going to invite people to
turn the camera off. Actually, I'm a fan of seeing everybody and everybody be seen, but maybe there's some moments in which I'm going to say, no, turn your camera off and think about that for a minute on your own, and And maybe it's good to make them change, turn your camera on and not off and not on.
Nice. And Iris, you're in your trainings and your choices when facilitating, similar idea?
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm gonna to experiment also to integrate to use it, but also to explain some of what I learned today on why it's what are the good pros and the cons, and how you can actually make conscious decisions about it.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think I'm going to make more judicious choices about the use of the camera. So I have, for example, some upcoming customer demos, which are going to be, I want them to focus on the demo, not on me per se. Now I'm thinking about this thing like maybe an introductory video and then video off while we're having the conversation about what they give them a chance to talk, give me a chance to show and have an interactive dialogue without the without this staunch, we must always have videos on at all time mantra.
Thank you. And Leslie and Tom, who both talked about the grayscale, I'm curious how you might use that.
I mean, I plan to actually just be forward with it and talk about it. You know, I think there's, if there's anything that we try to do when we use these Zoom meetings, it's connect with somebody that you're not in immediate proximity with. And so by talking about it, even at the top of a meeting of, hey, we're all facing Zoom fatigue because we're in year number 654 of the pandemic. I've been trying this thing in a lot of my meetings where we turn our video filters on to grayscale because it seems to kind of relax everyone a bit. Want to try it? And I don't know. I don't know how that's going to go, but I'm interested in it. It certainly was interesting to experience today.
One of the big things that came out in my research, Tom, that like what people are really crying for is they want their leaders to just be real, acknowledge the situation. I mean, I'm quoting them directly. Be real, acknowledge the situation. It's tough. Yes, we're here. We're glad to have a job, but this isn't easy.
Definitely. Yes.
Leslie?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I want to just experiment and play with it. I'm leading a workshop tonight, and so I'm like, shall we try that? And I think that it, like, to think about not just like the whole workshop, but at what point in the workshop does it make sense to do different things? And I think that in and of itself is going to be more engaging.
Yes.
If you do it, I would love to hear back how it goes. Definitely leave us a comment on the event recording and in the feedback. Speaking of which, we would love your feedback on this experience. So here's the follow-up and what to expect. So as those of you who have been here before know, I encourage you to open that feedback link right now. It's in the chat. It's the top link. Open it just right this very minute, because there is no way you're going to leave this session and go, you know what I want to do sometime later is give feedback. No, you're not going to do it. So do it now while it's fresh, please. And then in the next week or so, you can expect to see the edited recording, the slides, the chat, and all of those things posted in the Meeting Innovation community in the event recording section. I will, if it's interesting to you, also post how we do our workshop planning so that you can see the way that Julie and I coordinate and how we list out and how we prep things for the chat and all of that. Feel free to grab anything that's useful to you in your own work. And then next week, these are actually much closer together than I thought they would be, but it is next week. We're hosting Daniel Stillman, who's the author of Good Talk and a fairly prominent design thinking product development facilitator, who will be sharing his work on 9 elements of conversational leadership. So like many prominent facilitators, he has a conversational framework that involves a certain number of things that start with the letter P, purpose, participants, place, all of those kinds of things. And his version is interesting. It was new to me, and we will be looking at that next Thursday. So if you can join us, we'd love to see you there. And with that, we'll say thank you so much for spending your time with us this morning, afternoon, and
It's great being
have a
with you.
fabulous rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Tom.
Bye, guys. Good seeing you.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.